want to cover this because I think it's key that we, are consistent on this. So, Jen Psaki is speaking with a Fox News reporter at the White House press room, and the Biden administration is getting some heat because there are a record number of children that are being detained in facilities along the border, and it doesn't necessarily seem consistent with the messaging of no more kids in cages when we get into office. Now, there are complexities involved, but there were also broken promises involved. And so this is that interaction between Ducey and Jen Psaki.
You've been telling migrants from right there for a month now, all the way back to February 10th, that now is not the time to come, but they are coming in bigger numbers every day. So do you have a messaging problem?
Well, I would say that in the last administration, we had a morality problem, and children were being pulled from the arms of their parents, and kids were being sent back on a treacherous journey. And that's not the approach of this administration. So certainly we understand that means there will be more kids who are crossing the border. We made a policy decision that was the right, humane step to take. But I think it's also important for people to understand that the vast majority of people who come to our border are turned away, are sent back to their countries. What we're talking about here are unaccompanied children. And what our focus is on is ensuring that there are safe places for these kids to go that have access, where they have access to educational resources, health and medical attention, legal assistance as needed, and that we can expedite the vetting so that they can get to families and sponsors where they can have their cases adjudicated.
Okay, well, a lot of that is very significant spin. Now, it is true that the Biden administration doesn't have the kidnapping policy of the former administration, where they decided as a deterrent they were going to separate children from their families. This was written and drafted by the Trump administration with the help of Jeff Sessions, but it is also true that a record number of children are currently being held. The other caveat, I'm trying to be, just to be fair, I guess, in this argument, is that there are more people trying to come over right now, kids trying to meet up with their families in the United States, because there is a belief that maybe Biden would be more conciliatory and better. But the number one issue here is that over 8,500 migrant teens and children who cross the border without their parents are currently being housed. Nearly 3,500 more are stuck at Border Patrol stations waiting for beds in the shelters from where those migrant teens and children are being held. And they're being held for an average of 107 hours awaiting transfer to an HHS-run shelter, and the legal limit is 72 hours. So that's an average, and they're breaking the law every time they go over that 72-hour limit. So yes, it's not as deliberately cruel as the Trump administration, but they are still breaking the law with the amount of time that they are holding these children, and with just the breadth of the amount of children that they're detaining right now.
All right. Well, easy solution. Change the law, extend those hours, no longer breaking the law, right? I mean, but for really though, I mean, it seems unbelievable that the federal government could not figure out a better way to handle this situation. I mean, practically unlimited resources to get these children to the family members or relatives they were crossing the border to come live with. I mean, that's the facts here. People are stating that these unaccompanied minors come here and they act like, oh, what could the Biden administration do? Can't have kids wandering the streets in America by themselves. I mean, they're not coming here to like rent an apartment on their own. They're coming here to live with people that they know who are already here. Let's expedite that process. Let's get those families united. And there's literally no reason to be holding these children in these
white nationalism
centers.
You want to slow down the movement of non-white people into this country. That's fundamentally the policy sort of decision that's being obscured by all this.
Exactly. Right. America's doing really well, all of the mass death. Got to defend the nation. The nation's integrity. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I keep this is Zoom. I didn't mean to talk over you, Brandon. I just wanted to add that like the implicit white supremacy in this as well is that they're basically I don't think they take the children's concerns seriously as they would white children basically, and are more dismissive and willing to hold on to them than say a white child that was experiencing the same kind of trauma.
Also, you think they would figure out better accommodations too. Like if the answer is you have to hold them, obviously, and you're the more moral administration, and you care about these children, then why are you trying to reopen some of the places that were closed down during the Trump administration, which were deemed to be like prison cells for these kids? I mean, at the very least, you can't figure out a nicer way to take care of these children when you're holding them. I mean, it's baffling. It's baffling.
I would suspect that it's
But
cheap. It's cheaper to do, it's cheaper than building new, I don't know, safer, more humane facilities to imprison children at our border. At the same time, just going back to the spin put on it by by Psaki, I cannot pronounce that properly. You know, drawing on the Trump administration, we knew that was going to be the Biden administration's, go-to card whenever anyone asked why things aren't getting better as fast as they promised, right? Because we're not talking about I mean, we can discuss the complexities of turning that, the president just can't turn the ship that is America overnight, is what we always hear. But like, if that were the case, same with the $2,000 check, same with a lot of these promises, then maybe those complexities should have been mentioned when we were having the conversation about like what a Biden administration looked like. And I think there's this willingness to sort of pretend as though the American people can and should be infantilized, especially the liberal base can and should be infantilized about what is possible going into the election, while and once we get there, they should just be surprised and also, I guess, accustomed to and not too upset by the lack of follow through. But I think that just has a detrimental effect on like rather the Democrats' ability to get people to turn out for them, regardless of what the promise is. At a certain point, the Democrats are going to let you down because that's part of their mode. They promise you one thing and then they tell you the Republicans are getting in the way, or the parliamentarians getting in the way, or Joe Manchin's getting in the way. And I mean, that's all well and good when you're not actually relying on them for anything other than like a big like boost of self-esteem. Have them beat Trump, or like you sleep better at night because Trump isn't the president. But when it comes down like to your life actually relying on them, I don't necessarily know how you can continue to put that much faith in them, other than like the propaganda machine that is drumming up consent for their continued, just I guess, fecklessness, right? Because even if I believe, I mean, personally, as somebody who is on the left, as someone who is not doesn't consider himself a Democrat, that like Joe Biden is working on it, I think that you can't, rather I would say that like give them time is not a way to put pressure on him. And I think that's the narrative from Democratic Party defenders, people who were saying they were going to push Joe Biden to the left sometimes. It just becomes this give him time. Even if I think he needs time, that's just not a good way to get people to do things, in my opinion. I think that, at a certain point it's incumbent upon people who want things done, especially at the interpersonal level, to be as irrationally intransigent about those things getting done as possible. It can't just be, okay, now that Joe Biden's elected, it's not no kids in cages. It's, well, these cages are actually different because the bars are like horizontal, not vertical. So you see, that's a different thing. And I think that's what. But I mean, we were expecting that to happen. That was something that we were also expecting. So yeah, go ahead.
To your point about giving Joe Biden time, I mean, these kids don't have time. These kids don't have that time. How long before Joe Biden's detention centers result in one of these kids dying, like they did during the Trump administration's detention center era? I mean, something's going to happen in these detention centers because they're not made for children, and the people who work there do not typically take care of kids. I mean, like you mentioned, like, it's cheaper to just use these facilities, but I'm not saying they have to build a new facility. You mean during this time period, especially with COVID, where like hotels and daycare facilities have probably been shut down, and they're just without a doubt buildings that are made to take care of children and people who know how to take care of children out of work. You mean you couldn't hire those people and rent out those facilities instead of going to the detention centers and the security guards that run these detention centers? I mean, there's ways to go around this where they're just like dealing with it in a completely horrible manner in every single way. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I think that's the punitive strain that Emma was talking about that just runs through our society and is present in both parties. Because of course we have better accommodations for unhoused, unaccompanied minors at the border. We have better accommodations for unhoused people in our own country. We have better accommodations for any number of people who are living in unsuitable housing situations. But the line from, I would say, both parties, either explicitly or implicitly, is that like to give people things they did not work for or that they didn't deserve, or who are breaking the law by coming to the country, in some really vague narrative, is to encourage bad behavior. It's to encourage this sort of inherent morality that both parties, I guess, exist in every human being, and whether they're American or not American, that if you just give them too much stuff that they didn't work for, even if their lives depended on it, it just sets a bad example. People will think that they deserve to live.
And notice the frame
Right.
of the Fox question too. Does this create a messaging problem for you? Not like, I'm going to express concern about the children that are